I destroyed my relationship during what was supposed to be the most romantic week of our lives, and everyone thinks I'm just another cheater who got caught. But they don't know that Marcus had already been lying to me for months, or that the man whose texts he found on my phone wasn't who he thought. I'm guilty of terrible judgment and unforgivable betrayal, yes, but the complete picture is so much messier than the simple story of a woman who couldn't keep her legs closed on vacation. What's at stake isn't just my 5-year relationship or my reputation among our friends who have already chosen sides. It's the fact that I have to live with knowing I became exactly the person I swore I'd never be, someone who justifies infidelity, who rationalizes crossing boundaries, who convinces herself that emotional neglect excuses physical betrayal. Everyone thinks they understand what happened based on those text messages, but they're missing the context that makes this so much worse. I'm going to walk you through every decision, every rationalization, every moment where I chose the path that led to Marcus silently packing his bags while I was in the shower. There's a specific detail about those texts that would make even my harshest critics pause, something that reveals just how calculated and desperate I'd become. You'll judge me, you should, but at least you'll know the full truth. Marcus and I had been planning the Santorini trip for 2 years. We'd started saving the month after we moved in together, back when our relationship still felt like the kind of love story you tell your grandkids about. I'd created a Pinterest board with 247 pins, sunset dinner spots, hidden beaches, the exact villa with the infinity pool overlooking the caldera. Every time work got stressful or we had a stupid argument about whose turn it was to clean the bathroom, I'd pull up those photos and remind myself we were building towards something beautiful. I didn't notice when Marcus stopped contributing to the fund. Or maybe I did notice but told myself he was just busy with the promotion he'd been chasing. He'd always been ambitious. That's what attracted me initially, the way he attacked goals with single-minded focus. So when he started working late 3, then 4, then 5 nights a week, I swallowed my complaints and added extra shifts at the hospital. Nurses can always pick up overtime. The first real crack appeared 6 months before the trip. We were supposed to meet his parents for dinner and he canceled 2 hours beforehand via text. Something came up at work, go without me. I'd already driven halfway there. His mother's face when I walked in alone, the way she touched my hand and said, "You're very patient, dear," with a tone that suggested patience was code for something sadder that should have told me something. But I explained it away. That's what you do when you've invested 5 years in a Pinterest board with 247 pins. 3 months before Santorini, I started talking to Ryan. Not with any bad intentions, at least that's what I told myself. He was a physical therapist who worked on the orthopedic floor and we'd grab coffee between shifts. He asked about my day. He remembered things I'd said the week before. When I mentioned the Greece trip, he pulled up photos from his own vacation there and spent 20 minutes showing me restaurants we had to try. Marcus hadn't asked me anything beyond "what's for dinner?" in weeks. I knew I was walking toward a cliff edge. I knew that the flutter in my chest when Ryan's text came through meant I was building something I shouldn't be building. But I told myself we were just friends, that I was allowed to have male friends, that it wasn't my fault if my boyfriend was never home to hear about my day. The week before we left for Greece, Marcus came home at midnight to find me asleep on the couch, my phone still in my hand, open to a conversation with Ryan about whether the sunset from Oya or Amuravigli was more spectacular. He didn't say anything, just looked at the screen for a long moment, then went to the bedroom. That's when I should have known something was deeply wrong. The Marcus I'd started dating would have demanded explanations, would have been jealous and possessive. This Marcus just looked tired. But I was so focused on defending myself, he's just a friend from work, that I didn't ask why he didn't even care enough to be angry. We flew to Athens barely speaking. The tension felt like a living thing between us on that 9-hour flight, but I kept telling myself that once we got to Santorini, once we were in that villa with the infinity pool, everything would reset. We'd remember why we'd fallen in love. We'd reconnect. I was so catastrophically wrong. The villa was exactly as perfect as the photos promised. Whitewashed walls, bougainvillea cascading over the terrace, the caldera stretching out in shades of blue that didn't seem real. Our first night we had dinner on the private patio, grilled octopus and local wine, the sunset turning everything golden and pink. Marcus barely looked at me. He took photos of the view, posted them on Instagram with the caption, "Finally here," and a blue heart emoji. Not a word about me, not a single photo of us together. "Are you even going to try?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He looked up from his phone, genuinely confused. "Try what?" "To salvage this. To make this trip what we planned. I'm here, aren't I? I paid for half this villa." That's when I should have pushed harder, demanded we have the real conversation we've been avoiding for months. Instead, I excused myself to the bathroom and texted Ryan, "I think I made a mistake planning this trip." He responded in seconds, "That bad already?" And we were off, this dangerous dance of emotional intimacy that felt justified because my boyfriend was ignoring me in paradise. Over the next 2 days, the pattern continued. Marcus would wake up, work out, take photos for Instagram, respond to work emails for hours, then suggest we grab lunch somewhere. We'd sit across from each other at restaurants with million-dollar views, making small talk like distant acquaintances. At night, he'd fall asleep scrolling through his phone while I lay awake wondering how we'd gotten here. In every moment of loneliness, I'd document for Ryan. Not in a way that felt like cheating, or so I told myself, just sharing my disappointment with someone who seemed to genuinely care about my feelings. "You deserve someone who sees you," Ryan texted on the third night after I described how Marcus had spent our sunset dinner cruise on a work call. I stared at that message for a long time, then I wrote back, "Maybe I do." That was the moment. That was when I made the choice that would blow up everything, even though the actual betrayal was still days away. The next morning I woke up to find Marcus already gone. A note on the counter went for a hike back this afternoon. It was our 5-year anniversary. He'd forgotten. Or he hadn't forgotten, but he'd chosen a solo hike over acknowledging it. I sat on the terrace for an hour, crying into my coffee, watching other couples walk by holding hands. Then I opened my messages and saw that Ryan was awake. The time difference meant it was midnight back home. "Happy anniversary," he'd written. "Hope Marcus is making it special." The fact that Ryan remembered when Marcus hadn't forgotten felt like a sign. I know how insane that sounds. I know that people in healthy relationships don't interpret their coworkers' text messages as signs from the universe. But I was so deep in my hurt and loneliness that I'd lost all perspective. I didn't plan what happened next. Or maybe I did in the same way that someone who drives drunk didn't plan to crash but got in the car anyway. "He's not here," I typed. "He forgot. Jesus, I'm sorry. I don't think he loves me anymore." "Then he's an idiot." We texted back and forth for the next hour, and with each message I felt myself crossing invisible lines. The conversation turned from commiseration to flirtation, from emotional support to something else entirely. Ryan told me I was beautiful. He said if I were his girlfriend, he'd never forget an anniversary. He said he'd been thinking about me more than he should. And instead of shutting it down, instead of recognizing I was using him as a band-aid for my failing relationship, I encouraged it. I sent him a photo of me on the terrace in my bikini. Nothing overtly sexual, just me by the pool, but we both knew what I was doing. "You're killing me," he responded. "Sorry," I typed, but I wasn't sorry at all. Marcus came back that afternoon sunburned and sweaty, grabbed a shower, then suggested we go into town for dinner. "It's our anniversary," I said, my voice flat. He froze. I watched the realization cross his face, followed by guilt, then something that looked almost like relief, like he was grateful to have a concrete reason for the distance between us. "Shit, I'm so sorry. I'll make a reservation somewhere nice." But the apology felt hollow. We both knew he hadn't just forgotten the date. He'd stopped caring enough to remember. We went to a restaurant in Fira that overlooked the caldera, one of those places where tourists propose and celebrate milestones. The couple next to us was feeding each other dessert and laughing. We sat in silence, picking at our meals. "I got you something," Marcus said eventually, sliding a small wrapped box across the table. I opened it to find a bracelet, delicate and gold and completely generic. The kind of thing you buy at a hotel gift shop when you remember at the last second that you need a present. "It's beautiful," I lied. "You hate it." "I don't hate it, do you even want to be here with me?" He looked out at the view instead of at me. I don't know how to answer that. The honesty was somehow worse than a lie. We finished dinner without speaking, walked back to the villa in silence, and went to bed on opposite sides of the mattress. I waited until his breathing evened out, then I pulled out my phone and messaged Ryan, "This trip is a disaster." We talked until 3 a.m. my time. The conversation turned explicitly flirtatious. He told me what he'd do if he were there with me. I told him what I wanted. We didn't exchange photos or anything that would technically count as cheating in the traditional sense, but I was emotionally naked with this man while my boyfriend slept 2 feet away. I knew it was wrong. I knew I was betraying Marcus, betraying our relationship, betraying every promise I'd made. But part of me, the part that was hurt and angry and desperate to feel wanted, argued that Marcus had betrayed me first through his neglect. That's the logic of someone preparing to do something unforgivable. The next day, Marcus announced he wanted to rent ATVs and explore the island. It was the first genuine enthusiasm he'd shown all trip, and I agreed immediately, desperate for anything that might feel like connection. We spent the day driving along coastal roads, stopping at black sand beaches and tiny villages. For a few hours, it almost felt like old times. We took selfies together, the first photos of us as a couple all trip. We shared gelato. We laughed at my terrible driving when I nearly ran us off the road. I let myself hope that maybe we'd turned a corner, that maybe the trip would salvage us after all. That night, I barely thought about Ryan. We had sex for the first time in weeks, and while it wasn't particularly passionate, at least it was something. I fell asleep thinking maybe I'd been catastrophizing. Maybe we'd get through this rough patch and look back on this trip as the turning point. I woke up the next morning to find Marcus standing by the bed, my phone in his hand. My unlocked phone. My messages to Ryan open on the screen. Who the fuck is Ryan? His voice was eerily calm. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might vomit. Marcus, let me explain. Who the fuck is Ryan? He's a guy from work, we're just friends. He laughed, a terrible sound. Then he started reading aloud from the messages. The flirtations, the bikini photo, my complaints about him, Ryan's comments about what he'd do if I were his girlfriend. Every word was a nail in the coffin of my relationship. Just friends, Marcus repeated. Just friends don't send bikini pics and talk about what they want to do to each other. We didn't actually do anything, I said, even though I knew how weak that sounded. You did this while I was sleeping next to you. He wasn't yelling, that was somehow worse. He was speaking in this flat, dead voice like I'd killed something inside him. On our anniversary trip, in the bed we're sharing, you were sexting another man. You forgot our anniversary. You've ignored me this entire trip, you've ignored me for months. So this is my fault. That's not what I'm saying. No, please explain how me working hard to pay for this trip that you wanted justifies you cheating. I didn't cheat, we didn't even kiss. He stared at me like I was a stranger. Do you actually believe that? That because you didn't physically fuck him this isn't cheating? I didn't have an answer. Or I did, but it was a tangle of justifications and hurt feelings and defensiveness that I knew would only make things worse. Marcus tossed my phone onto the bed. I'm going for a walk. When I get back, I want you to have decided whether you're going to stop lying to yourself about what you've done. He left. I heard the villa door close, then silence. I picked up my phone with shaking hands. The messages with Ryan were still open, and reading them now with Marcus's eyes, I couldn't understand how I'd convinced myself this was innocent. This wasn't friendship. This was an emotional affair, full stop, and I'd been too deep in my own justifications to see it clearly. I should have started figuring out how to fix this. Instead, my first instinct was to tell Ryan what had happened. Marcus found our messages, I typed. Oh shit, are you okay? I don't know, he's so angry. Did you tell him we never actually did anything? He doesn't care, he says it's still cheating. There was a long pause, then is it? Even Ryan could see what I'd been refusing to admit. I don't know what to do, I wrote. Do you love him, Marcus? I stared at that question for a long time. Had I ever, or had I just loved the idea of us, the Pinterest board version of our relationship? I thought I did, but if I did, I wouldn't have done this. Then maybe you have your answer. I was still sitting there, phone in hand, trying to figure out if Ryan was right when Marcus came back. He looked calmer but also more resolved, which scared me more than his anger had. I need to know the whole truth, he said. Everything. No more lies, no more minimizing. If there's any chance of us getting through this, I need complete honesty. This was my moment. My chance to come clean, to tell him everything, to start rebuilding trust from the ground up. And I almost did. I opened my mouth to confess it all, but then something stopped me, some instinct for self-preservation or maybe just cowardice, because the truth, the full truth, was so much worse than he knew. That's everything, I said. Ryan is a coworker, we became friends, the messages got inappropriate, I'm sorry, it was wrong, but nothing physical happened. Marcus studied my face. You swear that's all? I swear, he nodded slowly. Then I need to tell you something too. My heart started pounding. What? I've been distant because I've been working on something. A surprise, I was going to tell you on this trip. He pulled out his phone, opened his photos, showed me an image of a house. I made an offer on this 3 months ago. It's not final yet, but I've been working overtime to boost our down payment. I wanted to propose here in Santorini and tell you I'd bought us our first home. The world tilted. You were planning to propose? I had the ring, it's in my suitcase. His voice cracked. I was going to do it at sunset tonight on the terrace. I had a photographer hired and everything. I felt like I couldn't breathe. While I'd been complaining to Ryan about Marcus's neglect, about how he didn't care about me anymore, he'd been planning our future. He'd been working those late nights to buy us a house. He'd been distant because he was stressed and exhausted and trying to pull off something romantic. And I'd been sending bikini photos to another man. Marcus, I didn't know. How could you? I wanted it to be a surprise. He laughed bitterly. Surprise. We can still fix this. I'll cut off contact with Ryan completely. I'll do whatever it takes. No, he said quietly. We can't. But you said if I told you the truth, I wanted to believe we could get past this. But reading those messages, seeing how you talked about me to him, how you shared our relationship problems with some random guy instead of talking to me. He shook his head. That's not something I can get over. Not now. Maybe not ever. Please, I love you. Do you? Because it doesn't feel like it. I started crying then, ugly, desperate sobs because I could see our entire future crumbling and I had no one to blame but myself. Marcus didn't comfort me. He just stood there looking at me like I was someone he used to know. I'm going to stay in town tonight, he said. I've changed my flight to tomorrow. You can keep the villa for the rest of the week if you want. I just can't be around you right now. Don't go, please don't go. Goodbye, Sarah. He grabbed his suitcase, the one with the ring hidden inside, and left. I heard the door close, then footsteps down the path, then silence. I sat on the terrace of our perfect villa watching the sunset I was supposed to be watching as a newly engaged woman and texted Ryan he was going to propose. He bought us a house. Holy shit, I fucked up everything. What are you going to do? That's when I made my absolute worst decision. The one that proves just how broken my judgment had become. I have the villa for 5 more days, I typed. Your shift schedule has you off Thursday through Monday, right? The pause before his response felt like an eternity. Yeah, do you want to come to Santorini? I can feel you judging me through the screen right now, and you should. That text message, sent less than 3 hours after my boyfriend left me for emotionally cheating, asking the man I'd been emotionally cheating with to fly across the world to join me, represents the absolute bottom of my moral compass. Ryan didn't respond right away. I watched the typing indicator appear and disappear for several minutes. Finally, are you sure? I wasn't sure about anything except that I was in pain and I wanted to feel wanted, and I was spiraling in a way that made terrible decisions feel like the only option. Yes, I typed. I'll send you the details. He booked a flight that night. The fact that he could afford a last-minute international ticket and arrange time off work with less than 48 hours notice should have told me something about his life, his priorities, his judgment. But I was too deep in my own self-destruction to see the red flags. I spent the next day in a fog. I'd wake up, remember Marcus was gone, remember what I'd done, remember what I'd invited Ryan to do, and feel like I was watching myself from outside my body. This couldn't be me. I didn't do things like this. I was the responsible one, the planner, the person who spent 2 years saving for a dream trip. But that person was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Marcus had blocked me on everything. I tried calling, texting, even sending him an Instagram DM from my Finsta, all blocked. It was like I'd ceased to exist to him. Our friends back home were blowing up my phone asking what happened because Marcus had posted a cryptic Instagram story. Sometimes you don't really know someone until you travel with them. I didn't respond to anyone. How could I explain this? Ryan landed in Athens Thursday morning. I picked him up at the Santorini airport that afternoon, and the moment I saw him walking toward me in his wrinkled travel clothes, I realized how insane this was. This wasn't some romantic movie reunion. This was 2 people who'd barely spent time together in person, meeting in a foreign country because I'd imploded my relationship and he was opportunistic enough to capitalize on it. Hey, he said, pulling me into a hug that lasted too long. Hey. We took a taxi to the villa in awkward silence. What do you say to someone in this situation? Thanks for flying internationally to hook up with me while I'm actively ruining my life. The villa looked different with Ryan in it. The romantic touches that had been planned for Marcus and me, the roses, the champagne, the sunset views, now felt like props in some terrible farce. This place is incredible, Ryan said, walking onto the terrace. Yeah. He turned to look at me. Are you okay? No. Not even a little bit. Do you want me to leave? I can get a hotel. That was my out, my chance to stop the freefall. But instead I said, no, stay, I want you to stay. We had dinner in town and I got drunk on local wine while Ryan told me about his flight and his job and his apartment in Portland. Normal conversation that felt surreal given the circumstances. Other tourists probably looked at us and saw a couple on a romantic vacation, not whatever twisted situation we actually were. When we got back to the villa, we had sex. I'm not going to pretend it was meaningful or healing or any of the things I'd told myself it might be. It was desperate and sad and felt like I was trying to prove something to myself. That I was desirable, that I had options, that I wasn't just the girl whose boyfriend left her in paradise. Afterward, lying in the bed I'd shared with Marcus just days before, I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not relief, not even guilt, just a vast emptiness. Ryan fell asleep quickly and I went out to the terrace and stared at the stars. My phone buzzed, messages from friends who'd heard something was wrong. Are you and Marcus okay? From my best friend Jenna. Call me please, from my sister. I heard you guys are taking a break. What happened? From multiple people. I couldn't face answering them. Not yet, not until I understood what I'd done and why. That's when I finally let myself look at the truth. I'd been avoiding Marcus, had been distant, yes, but he'd been distant because he was trying to build us a future. And instead of trusting him, instead of communicating my needs, I'd sought validation from another man. I'd built an emotional affair on a foundation of assumptions and hurt feelings, and refused to see what was actually happening. And now I'd flown that man to Greece and slept with him less than 72 hours after my relationship ended, in the villa my ex had helped pay for, during the trip we'd planned together. I was a click, a cautionary tale. The person other women shake their heads at and say, I would never. Ryan stayed for 4 days. We pretended to be on vacation together, visiting beaches, taking photos, having meals at restaurants meant for couples celebrating anniversaries and proposals. Every moment felt hollow, like I was performing a part in a play I'd never auditioned for. On his last night, we were having dinner at a rooftop restaurant in Oya when I saw them. Marcus and a woman I didn't recognize 3 tables over. My first thought was that I was hallucinating. Marcus had flown home early, I'd seen the confirmation number on his phone. But no, it was definitely him. laughing at something this brunette was saying, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him all trip. He hadn't gone home, he'd lied about his flight. He'd stayed in Santorini with another woman. I watched them for several minutes before Ryan noticed. Isn't that? Yeah, who's she? I have no idea. I should have confronted him or left. Instead, I sat there in shock, watching my ex-boyfriend, the man who'd found my inappropriate texts and left me heartbroken, clearly on a date with someone new. The woman got up to use the bathroom, passing right by our table. Up close, I could see she was stunning, model pretty, with the kind of effortless elegance I'd always envied. As she passed, Marcus looked up and locked eyes with me. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he looked at Ryan at our table set for two, at the obvious intimacy of our positioning, and his face hardened. He stood up and walked over. Didn't take you long, he said, his voice cold. You want to talk? Who's she? Someone I deserve, someone who actually wants to be with me. You lied about your flight. Yeah, I did. I wanted to salvage something from this trip without you ruining it. Ryan cleared his throat. Maybe we should go. You're Ryan, Marcus said, looking at him. The physical therapist. Yeah. Did she tell you I was going to propose, that I bought us a house? Ryan's face went pale. No, she said you guys had been having problems for months. I bet she did. Marcus laughed bitterly. I'm working myself to death trying to build us a future, and she's sending you bikini pics and complaining about what a terrible boyfriend I am. Classic. Marcus, that's not fair, I started. What's not fair is finding out the person you love has been emotionally cheating on you. What's not fair is having your marriage proposal ruined. What's not fair is coming back to get closure and finding you've already replaced me. You're on a date? I shot back. I met Sophia 2 days ago. After you destroyed our relationship, you don't get to be mad that I'm moving on when you moved on before we even broke up. The woman, Sophia, had returned and was standing awkwardly nearby. Marcus, is everything okay? He took a breath, visibly composing himself. Yeah, just saying goodbye to my ex. The word hit like a slap. He turned back to me one last time. I hope he was worth it, Sarah, I really do. Then he went back to his table, put his arm around Sophia, and didn't look at me again. Ryan and I left shortly after. We didn't speak in the taxi back to the villa. What was there to say? That was intense, he finally offered. Yeah, did you really not tell me about the proposal? I didn't think it mattered, we were already over. It kind of matters, Sarah, like a lot. He ran his hands through his hair. I feel like I'm in the middle of something I didn't fully understand. You flew across the world to sleep with me 3 days after my relationship ended. What did you think this was? He flinched. I thought we had something real, all those conversations, the connection. We had inappropriate texts, that's not real. Then why am I here? I didn't have a good answer. I don't know. Ryan left the next morning looking relieved to escape. We exchanged awkward promises to talk when you're back home that we both knew were lies. The moment his taxi disappeared down the villa's driveway, I felt a wave of relief followed immediately by crushing loneliness. I was alone in paradise with 3 days left on our reservation, a maxed-out credit card, and the knowledge that I'd torched my entire life. The messages started flooding in after Marcus posted a photo with Sophia. Nothing explicit, just the two of them at sunset with the caption, "New Perspectives," but everyone who knew us could read between the lines. My phone became a weapon of social destruction. Jenna, what the fuck, Sarah? Marcus called me crying about you cheating. Is it true? My sister, Mom's asking questions. What do I tell her? My cousins saw Marcus's post. Are you guys done? Also, who's Ryan? Marcus's best friend Todd. I always thought you were better than this. Our mutual friend group was picking sides, and I could see which way the tide was turning. Marcus had the sympathy angle, the hardworking boyfriend betrayed by his ungrateful girlfriend. I had the scandal. Someone had clearly told people about Ryan coming to Greece because the questions got more pointed. Did you fly him out there on Marcus's dime? How long were you cheating? Does Ryan know about the proposal? I tried to explain, to give context, but text messages couldn't capture the nuance of months of emotional neglect meeting desperation meeting terrible judgment. Every explanation sounded like an excuse. I deactivated Instagram, then Facebook, then Twitter, but I couldn't stop checking what people were saying about me on platforms I couldn't access anymore, logging in through incognito browsers to see my character assassination in real time. The worst part was that they weren't entirely wrong. I had betrayed Marcus. I had brought another man to our anniversary trip. I had made every wrong choice at every possible turn. But they also didn't know that Marcus had lied about leaving, that he stayed in Santorini with another woman he met 2 days ago, something I was increasingly suspicious about, that he'd been so focused on his surprise that he'd ignored clear signs our relationship was struggling. Not that any of that justified what I'd done. It just meant we'd both failed each other in different ways at different times. I flew home on the scheduled date, landing at JFK to a different life than the one I'd left. Marcus had already moved his stuff out of our apartment. He must have had friends do it while we were gone. The empty spaces where his furniture had been felt like missing teeth. There was an envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside, a letter in Marcus's handwriting. Sarah, I'm staying at Todd's. My lawyer will contact you about the lease. Please don't try to reach out. I need space to process everything, and I think you do too. I'm keeping the house offer active because I still want it for myself. Alone. I hope someday you figure out why you did this, because I don't think you actually know. No love, no take care, just his initial and a legal threat. I called Ryan that night, desperate for someone who understood the context. Hey, he answered, sounding wary. I'm back, everything's fucked, Marcus moved out. I'm sorry. Are you got what you wanted? Silence. Then that's not fair. You're right, I'm sorry, nothing about this is fair to anyone. Sarah, I think we need to talk about us. Us? What we're doing, what this is. I laughed, a harsh sound. There is no us, Ryan, there was never an us. There was me having an emotional breakdown and you being available. So I was just a distraction? Weren't I just an opportunity for you? Be honest. Another long silence. Maybe we both fucked up. Yeah, maybe we did. We hung up without making plans to see each other. I blocked his number the next day, less out of anger and more out of a desperate need to stop the bleeding. Every person I cut off was one less reminder of what I'd done. Work was worse than I'd imagined. The hospital grapevine had clearly been active because I could feel the judgment in every interaction. My coworkers knew. Some had probably known about my friendship with Ryan before it crossed lines and had seen this coming. Ryan requested a transfer to a different floor. We'd pass each other in hallways and pretend not to notice. This man I'd flown to Greece, this person who'd seen me at my absolute worst. One day, about 3 weeks after I got back, Jenna finally agreed to meet me for coffee. I'm only here because we've been friends since middle school, she said immediately. But Sarah, what the fuck were you thinking? I don't know. That's not good enough. Marcus is devastated. He showed me the texts. He showed you. Yes, we all saw them, the whole friend group. Needed support. My stomach dropped, all of them, everything. Every humiliating detail. The bikini photo, you complaining about him, Ryan's gross comments, everything. I felt violated even though I had no right to. Those were my private messages, my private shame, but Marcus had weaponized them to secure his position as the victim. Which he was, but still. I was unhappy, I said weakly. Then you break up with him, you don't cheat. I didn't physically, don't. Jenna cut me off. Don't you dare minimize this. You emotionally betrayed someone who loved you, then you flew your side piece to Greece before Marcus's seat on the plane home was even cold. That's not a mistake, that's a pattern. She was right, God, she was so right. I hate myself, I whispered. Good, you should. Her voice softened slightly. But hating yourself isn't the same as fixing yourself. Have you figured out why you did this? I was lonely, Marcus was distant, I felt invisible. And instead of using your words like an adult, you found validation from another man. That's not Marcus's fault, that's yours. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. Marcus told me about the house, Jenna continued. About the proposal, do you have any idea how much he loved you? Loved, past tense. Yeah, past tense, because you killed it. We talked for another hour and it was brutal. Every hard truth I'd been avoiding, Jenna laid out in explicit detail. My tendency to play the victim, my inability to communicate when things got hard, my pattern of seeking external validation instead of doing the internal work. You need therapy, she said finally. Like actual professional help. This isn't normal person relationship problems, this is self-sabotage. She was right about that too. I started seeing a therapist the next week. Dr. Morrison was a woman in her 50s who didn't coddle me or let me hide behind justifications. You made a series of choices, she said in our third session. Each choice made sense in the moment based on your emotional state, but that doesn't make them right. The question is, why was your emotional state so fragile that betraying your values felt like a reasonable option? We unpacked my need for external validation, my tendency to build resentment instead of communicating needs, my fear of confrontation that led me to seek escape routes instead of solutions. It turned out that my relationship with Marcus had been the latest in a long pattern of me avoiding hard conversations until everything exploded. You have to grieve the relationship, Dr. Morrison told me. Not just what was, but what could have been. You have to sit with the fact that you destroyed something that might have been savable. That was the hardest part, not the social fallout or the loneliness or even the guilt. It was the growing realization that if I just talked to Marcus, really talked to him vulnerably and honestly about feeling neglected, we might have fixed it. The house, the proposal, the future we'd been building, it had been real, and I'd demolished it based on assumptions. Marcus stayed with Sophia. I'd see their photos sometimes when mutual friends forgot to hide their stories from me. They looked happy. Not performatively happy for Instagram, but genuinely content in a way Marcus and I hadn't been for months before the trip. That hurt more than I expected. The confirmation that he was better off without me. 6 months after Santorini, I ran into Marcus at Trader Joe's. Literally ran into him. I turned a corner with my cart and we nearly collided. Sarah, his voice was neutral. Marcus, hi. We stood there awkwardly while other shoppers navigated around us. How are you? I asked, immediately regretting the click. Good, really good actually. He paused. You. I'm working on things, therapy, trying to understand why I stopped. This wasn't the place. I'm managing. That's good. Growth is important. Another awkward pause. I'm sorry, I blurted. I know I said it before, but I'm truly sorry. You deserved better. He studied me for a moment. Yeah, I did, but I'm not sure I was giving you my best either. We were both checked out in different ways. It was the most generous thing he'd said to me since everything imploded. Sophia seems great, I offered. She is, we're actually engaged. The words hit like a punch, but I managed to smile. Congratulations, really? Thanks, he shifted his weight. I should go, she's waiting in the car. Of course, take care, Marcus. You too, Sarah. I watched him walk away, this man I'd spent 5 years with who'd planned a future I'd destroyed. Part of me wanted to run after him, to explain everything I'd learned, to show him I understood now why everything fell apart. But that would have been selfish. He'd moved on, he was happy. The kindest thing I could do was let him go. I stood in the frozen food aisle and cried quietly while pretending to examine pizza options. Here's what I've learned in the year since Santorini: people want simple stories. They want to sort you into victim or villain, wronged or wrong. The truth is almost always more complicated. Was Marcus perfect? No, he got so lost in planning our future that he neglected our present. He became distant and uncommunicative, and instead of recognizing the damage that was doing, he assumed his grand gesture would fix everything. But his imperfection didn't justify my betrayal. 2 wrongs have never made a right, no matter how lonely I felt. I did cheat on him. Maybe not physically until after we'd broken up, but the emotional affair was real and devastating and intentional. I made choices that destroyed us, then made worse choices that destroyed any chance of redemption. The Ryan thing haunts me most. Not because I lost some great love. What Ryan and I had was never real, just mutual validation masquerading as connection. But because flying him to Greece proved something terrible about me, that when I'm hurting, I burn everything down rather than sit with the pain. I've had to rebuild my entire social circle. Most of our mutual friends sided with Marcus, which was fair. I don't blame them. I started going to different restaurants, different grocery stores, different neighborhoods to avoid the constant reminder of everything I'd lost. My family knows the broad strokes but not the details. My mother thinks Marcus and I grew apart. My sister knows more but has been surprisingly kind, probably because she went through her own messy divorce and understands that relationships rarely end cleanly. I'm dating again, sort of, nothing serious. Every time someone new asks about my last relationship, I have to decide how much to disclose. Do I tell them I cheated? Do I explain the context? Do I just say it's complicated and hope they don't push? I usually just say we wanted different things, which is both true and a cowardly oversimplification. The therapist work continues. I'm learning to sit with discomfort instead of seeking escape routes. I'm learning to communicate needs before resentment builds. I'm learning that external validation is empty unless I have internal stability first. But knowing intellectually why I self-destructed doesn't erase what I did or who I hurt. The villa in Santorini sent me an email last week offering a discount if I want to book again. I stared at that email for a long time before deleting it. That trip was supposed to be the beginning of my engaged life, my homeowner life, my happily ever after. Instead, it became the week I learned exactly how destructive I can be when I'm at my worst. I think about Marcus's face when he saw those texts, the way he looked at me like I was a stranger. I think about the ring he had hidden in his suitcase, the house he'd been buying, the future he'd been building while I was tearing us apart. I think about Ryan reading those texts now and understanding what he'd been part of, the role he played in someone else's destruction. I hope he learned something too, though I'll never know. Mostly I think about the moment I sent that bikini photo, the instant where I crossed from emotionally vulnerable to actively betraying my relationship. If I could go back and stop myself, would I? Or was our relationship already doomed by that point, with both of us too broken and too proud to admit we were failing? I'm telling you this story now because I saw Marcus's wedding photos on Instagram yesterday. He married Sophia in Santorini on the same terrace where he'd planned to propose to me. It was beautiful, sunset ceremony, all our old friends in attendance, his parents beaming. Everything our wedding would have been. And instead of feeling jealous or angry or even particularly sad, I felt grateful that he got his happy ending, even if I wasn't part of it. That's growth, I guess. The ability to be happy for someone you hurt, to accept that you lost something beautiful because you weren't ready for it, to sit with the consequences of your actions without completely drowning in self-hatred. I destroyed my relationship on what should have been the best trip of my life. I betrayed someone who loved me because I was too cowardly to voice my needs. I flew another man to Greece because I couldn't sit with my own guilt and loneliness. Those are facts. But the full story is messier than woman cheats, loses everything. It's about 2 people who stopped communicating, who made assumptions, who failed each other in different ways until everything collapsed. It's about how hurt people, how loneliness makes you do desperate things, how the gap between who you think you are and who you become in crisis can be devastating. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just asking for understanding that people contain multitudes. We can be both the villain and the victim of our own stories, both the destroyer and the destroyed. Judge me if you need to. God knows I've judged myself. But remember that your worst moment doesn't have to define you forever. As long as you're willing to do the hard work of understanding why it happened and ensuring it never happens again. That's all any of us can do: learn from our disasters and try to be better the next time someone trusts us with their heart.